I recently picked up a 2013 trash can Mac Pro, and if you watch the shorts on this YouTube channel, you've probably seen it a couple times already. And the goal was that I was going to buy it at a really good price because, like most content creators have noticed recently, they have plummeted in value, and then I was going to upgrade it to its maximum and see how good it was. And, well, I bought it from an online reseller through Amazon called All Out Apple, which is now called Mac Depot, and they changed their name for some reason. But my experience with buying it is something I want to share with you because where I benefited, you still need to be careful because some people may not be as lucky. So let's talk about it. So like I said, if you've been keeping an eye on the secondhand market for Macs, you've probably noticed, like most content creators have, that the 2013 trash can Mac Pro has plummeted in price. They used to be holding their value for a long time, way longer than they should have. They were still thousands of dollars as of recently, or cheap ones would go for $500 to $700 for their baseline configurations. That's the quad-core D300 graphics and 8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes of RAM. I purchased a 6-core model with the D500 graphics and 16 gigabytes of RAM for $279, which is a pretty good deal, which gets even better when we talk about what actually happened, but we'll get into that shortly. So the purchase process was pretty standard. I found it through All Out Apple on Amazon as a refurbisher, and it was considered a refurbished device, meaning that they were supposed to have cleaned it up and it would be in decent shape with potentially some visible scratches, and to their credit, it shipped very quickly and arrived ahead of schedule. So everything's going well so far. Oh, and I also forgot to mention it was supposed to have a 256 gig SSD, so literally a one step up from base configuration model, which would have been, what, $5,000 back when they launched? So yeah, overall, pricing-wise, I felt like I was getting a pretty good deal. It arrived and, well, the packaging was okay. It was wrapped in some pretty aggressive bubble wrap, and the box didn't look like it had been kicked too hard by UPS, so it all seemed pretty good. Then I took the cord out, and it was an iMac cord. You can tell it's a power cord for the iMac because, well, number one, it's not black like the one for the Mac Pro, but also it's got that surrounding piece for the plug that goes into the computer that's angled. It does this so that it sits flush against the iMac. That's not what the Mac Pro comes with. The Mac Pro's power cord is normally black. It's got a square piece that surrounds the plug that goes into the computer itself, so you have this nice flush look to the back. So, well, I guess I'm not getting that. It's not great looking so far. So let's just ignore the power cord. Let's take a look at the actual Mac Pro. And first glance, it's pretty good looking. There's only a couple scratches around back near the power cord, which tells me that it was probably using a Kensington lock adapter. So it was probably in an education environment, or it might have been in a studio where they lock them to the desks. I don't know. But aside from those little scratches, the actual cosmetic look of the aluminum housing was really nice. But man, was this thing dusty. Like, oh yeah, that's pretty dusty. And that fan is... This thing sat and ran for a long time and never had some compressed air blown through it. Holy crap. And as a little bit of a spoiler for the video coming up where I actually upgrade this thing, the thermal paste had also not been touched. So yeah, that all-out Mac refurbished claim is not looking so great. But I went and plugged the serial number into Apple's warranty section on their website to see when this thing was purchased, and fortunately, it is not from 2013. This was actually purchased at the very end of 2017, which means that this thing was bought only about a year and some change before the new Mac Pro came out. That's a really weird time to buy one of these things, considering that they were already sort of showing their age around 2016 or even late 2015. But that means it's a newer one, and hopefully that means that the D500s and the RAM and the processor are all going to be in pretty decent shape. So let's fire it up and take a look at what we've got. Once I got it all set up, I saw that we had macOS Sierra installed, which was kind of weird. I'm surprised they didn't push it further, but they may have just done the internet recovery, and that was the most recent version it would have pulled from. And I saw that we had the 6-core processor that I ordered. And that was the only thing they got right with my order. Don't worry, it turns out that I benefited from them messing up my order, but you might not be so lucky. Taking a look first at the RAM, this thing has 32 gigabytes of RAM. Double what I ordered. I ordered a 16 gigabyte RAM kit, and this has 32 gigs. All right, Then I looked at the storage, and I have 512 gigs of storage. Again, double what I ordered. Hell yeah, that's freaking awesome. Then I looked at the graphics. This thing has D700 graphics, the maximum graphics you could buy for this thing. So, that changes my upgrade plan. See, when I bought this, of course, I wanted to see if I could max this thing out as cheaply as possible, and I wanted to give myself a bit of a challenge by seeing if we could upgrade the graphics cards as well. So I bought the D500s, and I wanted to see if we could buy D700 graphics cards, potentially separately or together, didn't matter, and swap them out. Well, I don't have to do that now, and I was also intending to upgrade to a terabyte of storage, so obviously I'm still going to upgrade from 512, but it's not as big of a leap as I was intending, and I was going to maybe max out to 64, but I was going to start at 32 and see how things went. Well, I got 32 now, so I guess the next step is 64 gigs of RAM. This video isn't going to be particularly about going into performance or how this thing handles in its current configuration. This is more talking about purchasing one of these through a refurbisher. So in my personal experience, at least specifically through the purchaser that I went through, I really can't recommend taking the risk that I did when it comes to buying these. The site itself, or the buyer, seller, whatever, from Amazon was called All Out Apple, and they are now called Mac Depot. So number one, the change in the name tells me that they maybe hop around with different names and just sell things willy-nilly. But also, I got really, really lucky with this purchase. Like, I ordered a mid-range configuration, 6 cores, D500, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 256 gig SSD, and the only thing they got right was literally the 6-core processor. Everything else was wrong, but fortunately, what they got wrong benefited me. I got the better graphics, I got more RAM, I got more storage. All of that was a good thing for me. Now imagine if you buy something like a MacBook Pro from them. RAM's not upgradable. Graphics aren't upgradable, processor, nothing's upgradable except for the storage. And they send you the wrong one in the opposite direction. You order 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and an i7, and you get an i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. Well, you can upgrade the storage, but now you're gonna have to go through the hassle of either dealing with it or returning it, which is its own hassle. So when you go to buy one of these machines, especially when you're buying an older Mac, don't go through the refurbishers of Amazon. There's a lot of other options, and in fact, there are even sketchier options if you go looking for them on their own dedicated websites. Austin Evans did an entire video going through Strictly Mac and still ran into these issues. Actually, I think it was called Strictly Apple, but either way, he went and bought a bunch of different Apple computers, and they were overpriced, not spec'd correctly, or they just got everything wrong. So when you're doing this, the moral of this video's story is to be extremely careful when you buy these. Amazon is kind of hit or miss. Sounds like from Austin Evans' experience, Strictly Apple is also pretty hit or miss. My recommendation, as weird as it sounds, is to go potentially through something like eBay. Because with eBay, you can usually contact the seller more easily than you can through Amazon. You can also see pictures taken by the seller, whereas I took a risk by just looking at a stock photo and seeing the specs listing and saying, let's see if this works out. You don't have quite those same issues with eBay, and if you do see an eBay listing with a stock photo, you can either avoid it or try to contact the seller directly. At the end of the day, when you're buying used anything, do your due diligence. Don't do what I did and try to take a risk. I was able to do it because no matter what happened, I was going to be able to make content about it. But for most people, just buying a used machine, probably not going to be quite the same experience, or really not worth the same risk. For me personally, I like to try to go to local stores, but trying to find a 2013 Mac Pro at a local shop is really not going to happen in this area. I mean, I was able to get a 2015 MacBook Air at a local shop that has worked perfectly for me, but I think the trash can Mac Pro is a little too niche. So if you have to get something online, or you want a product and the best way to get it is online, do your research, try to find either a specialized site that has really good ratings, or maybe go through eBay since you can contact the seller. But Strictly Apple, from Austin Evans' experience, mine with All Out Mac or All Out Apple, and now Mac Depot, that's a no-go for me. So maybe avoid Amazon, avoid strictly Apple. That's basically the moral of this story. But either way, that's it for the purchasing experience of this product. Again, maybe avoid things like Amazon, but I do have a ton of videos planned for this Mac Pro. I've got an entire upgrade video I still have to edit. I've got a performance video where I do an entire edit on this Mac Pro instead of using my normal machine, and just some general thoughts on what this thing is like to use all these years later in 2024. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, definitely subscribe. If you like this video, give it a like, and let me know what you all think in the comments about this machine. I do have it currently running as something that I'll talk about in a later video as well, so that'll be interesting. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, leave some comments on what you think, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.